Hello and welcome to this week's Minds and Money 5 at 5 show, which this week is sponsored by Mawson Resources, Capella Minerals and GoGold, and is brought to you in association with the Resource Global Network. For those of you attending 5 at 5 for the first time, the aim of 5 at 5 guests at 5 p.m, is to maintain engagement between investors and miners through a lively, interactive format whilst we wait the return of physical events. A few admin announcements before we start. In order to make the session as interactive as possible, I would recommend you have your video switched on. You can submit questions in the chat function, which is at the bottom of the screen. You can also wave your hand virtually, and we can also go and allow you to go and ask a question live as well. We'll also be having polling questions throughout the webinar where you can vote. And as I said earlier, it's towards the end of the week, so you're invited to have a glass of wine, beer to relax, sit back and enjoy. For this week's show, we've got a bit of a gold theme focus, and discuss this, we've got a great lineup of guests. We've got Michael Hudson, Chairman and CEO of Mawson Resources. We have Langille, CEO of GoGold. We have Eric Roth, CEO of Capella Minerals. Jayant Bhandari of Anarcho Capital, and Emily King, who's both the principal of KWR Capital, a founder of Prospector, and also Chief Innovation Officer with Analog Gold. So a warm welcome to our panelists. What will happen to gold in 2021? And I gave sort of 4 options on the, I gave 5 options on the polling question. One was that gold was to surpass $2,500 per ounce. The second option was that gold was to outperform silver. The third option that gold was to outperform Bitcoin. Fourth option that gold was to outperform the US dollar. And the last option was that gold was to perform a greater ROI for juniors as opposed to mid-tiers and majors. Okay, so perhaps Emily, I can actually go to yourself first. What would be your big prediction for gold for 2021?
Well, my fingers are certainly crossed for crossing $2,500 an ounce. So I voted for that.
Okay. And then perhaps we can also unmute Jayant as well, Katrina. It'd be good to get Jayant's answer.
Hey, good evening. I think gold will outperform US dollar, and the reason is very simple. We live in very uncertain times. We actually live in very certain times, really. There were riots in several cities in the US yesterday on the inauguration day, and it wasn't because of the right-wing people. It was the radical leftists rioting in several cities. And this will ramp up actually as time goes by. Biden will be under huge pressure to keep the promises, the outrageous promises he made. A lot of rivers of fiat money will flow in the US. So my best guess is that US dollar will underperform gold.
Okay, thank you for that. Perhaps I could go and bring in Michael Hudson of Mawson. What's your big prediction for gold in 2021?
Well, I think there's multiple answers there, and I think you'll hear that across the board. But because I drink my own Kool-Aid and I'm an explorer, and I'll answer it in terms of line selection. Have the cycle, the clock that they publish, and we're somewhere around between 10 and 11 o'clock, which can last for a number of years before we get to 12 o'clock. And in that cycle, the juniors generally outperform the majors. People start leaving the majors to go to the big bucks and juniors and paper takeovers and lots of big new floats. And in that part of the cycle, juniors generally outperform the majors. So everyone loves exploration again as rewarding the opportunity.
Okay, thank you for that. And then just turning to Brad from GoGold.
Yeah, I think in 2021, gold will surpass 2,500. I think silver, good opportunity that silver will go through $35. And GoGold being about 60% silver production. So I think primarily it'll be debasing of the US dollar with money printing, and gold will be a good store of real true value, and the dollar will become a riskier asset to hold.
And then perhaps just going last but not least to Eric Roth from Capella. Eric, what are your sort of thoughts as well?
Yeah, Andrew, I sort of side a little bit there with Jayant in the sense of it certainly, I think, will outperform the US dollar. The US dollar's been very, very strong. I mean, stock markets are very high too, and still at all-time highs. And I think there's room for corrections there. So, but as Michael said too, there's multiple answers here. Obviously, we are explorers. We are bullish on the gold price. That's why we're here. I think the market should be happy with the gold prices where they are. We'll take every advance from here up, and anything north of $2,000, I think would be great for the industry.
Yeah, and then do you and then kind of like do you have any sort of thoughts, Eric, as to where the price of gold would be by the end of 2021?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, or I'm no good at reading tea leaves. But I mean, I think if it stays over 2,000, I'm not sure if it gets to 2,500 this year, but certainly if it stays over 2,000, I think that's fantastic. Okay, let's see where we get to. I guess, but as I say, we're in the space because we are bullish on.
Thank you very much for that. Then let's go and move on to the first presentation of the day. The first mining update of this week's show is from Eric Roth. Eric is an economic geologist with 25 years of experience in international mining's exploration and mining project evaluation. He was most recently Chief Operating Officer of Marina Resources. Eric is now CEO of Capella Minerals. Capella has some exciting projects in Norway and Argentina. Over to you now, Eric, for your presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Thanks for the introduction, and welcome to everybody who's joined the call. Just as a little bit of background for Capella, so I did mention previously that we are bullish on the gold price. I can say I'm also bullish on the copper. Our copper projects here as well too. But so Capella as a company was previously known as New Dimension Resources. We traditionally had projects in Canada and Argentina. In 2020, we actually made a sidestep and we decided to not continue in Argentina for an indirect interest in projects, and we've moved into Scandinavia. So we acquired projects from EMX, Roth, 2 copper projects in Norway and 1 gold project in. So the company in a nutshell, as it currently stands, we have 5 active projects that we are moving forward in parallel. So in Canada, we have 2 joint ventures. These are both gold projects. So we have the Domain joint venture in Manitoba, which is a joint venture with Yamana Gold. We also have the Savant Lake joint venture in Ontario, which is a JV with Ethos Gold. And obviously, I think everybody knows Yamana. I'm not sure if everybody knows Ethos Gold, but that group of companies has had a lot of success over the years. They have a sister company now in Newfoundland, which is called Newfound Gold, which is doing very, very well. They've also been involved in other projects around the Savant Lake area, with Great Bear and Dixie and a few other things as well too. So it's been a very successful team, and we're very happy to have them working with the project. If I move quickly across to Scandinavia, so as I mentioned, we did acquire just late last year 2 copper projects in Norway. The nice thing about these projects is these are projects in former mining districts. So these are projects that were active, but they were basically in production for 300 or so years, and they only closed in the mid-1980s on the back of low metal prices. There's plenty of upside in these areas to still test. So our exploration at the moment is looking for extensions to the old mines, plus looking at new targets throughout those properties. As the saying goes, the best place to find a mine is in the shadow of a head frame, and that's exactly what we're doing on the 2 Norwegian projects. And the third project that we acquired from EMX was the Southern Gold line in Sweden, and that's also in a gold belt. As you'll hear later on from people like Michael, who are also working next door in Finland, this part of the world has really been underexplored for so long, and it's kind of extraordinary to see what's coming out in these, in these areas. In the case of Southern Gold Line particularly, we've got big projects near us. We have Barsele, which is of course a joint venture between Agnico and Barsele Minerals. We also have Dragon Mining with 2 mines in our immediate vicinity. So, these are all districts that are underexplored and with lots and lots of upside potential. And just a quick mention there on the 2 Argentina projects. We did divest 2 Argentine projects in 2020. One was Sierra Blanca, which was a gold-silver project, which we divested to Austral Gold. We still have a residual interest in that, but Austral does have an option to purchase the last 20% of that. And we're also just in the process of closing a deal with Cerrado Gold on the Las Calandrias and Minera Mariana. So in a nutshell, Capella, where it stands today, 5 active projects that we are moving forward in parallel. We've got the 3 gold projects, of which 2 are in Canada, 2 are in Norway. And as you'll see, all of those areas, all of those projects are in districts where there are other known deposits, and you know, there's some good things happening in there, plus the residual interest in the Argentine projects. So going forward, the plan for the company this year, we do expect, of those 5 projects, we do expect to be drilling on 4 of them before the end of the year. Now, the one project which I think probably needs another good summer field season is Southern Gold Line in Sweden. But I'm pretty sure that we'll get to be drilling on all of these projects during 2021. So from our perspective, you know, there's lots of good things happening here. And what I do like is you have that optionality. We're obviously very, you know, we're in a buoyant gold market. We're obviously very bullish on gold, but I personally am also very bullish on copper. And I think we do fit that criteria of having a really nice mix of projects. And just as a sort of just out of interest, we only have a $10 million market cap. So of all of my peers who you'll see later on are valued much higher than we are. So, you know, this is still a relatively cheap portfolio and a very good quality portfolio to move forward. So that's in a nutshell where we stand. You know, one thing I did want to also mention too is that in the Canadian projects, basically all of the projects, in fact, are high-grade projects. You know, management has a track record of discovery and pushing projects through to PEA and PFS type studies. So all of the projects that we're looking for are high-grade. The gold projects are all high-grade projects, and the same with the copper projects in Norway. So we're looking at high-grade copper deposits, VMS type systems. Just on the right there on that slide, you'll see there's just, and this just gives you a great example of how underexplored Scandinavia is. If you look at the Norwegian projects, I mean, you can actually physically walk over outcrops that, you know, running over 2% copper, and they've never been drilled. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary. So a lot of potential here and a lot of upside, and we do plan to really move these projects forward in 2021 with drill programs and really move them through discovery and on to then resource definition. So this is going to be a very busy year for the company, and I look forward to keeping the market informed as we go forward.
Thank you very, very much for that. I'd like to kick off the questions because I was reading up about your projects, and I saw that you recently signed a artificial intelligence contract with Geotech to use their card system. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that and how innovation in technology is changing? Is like changing the way you operate?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, Andrew. And you know, from our perspective, so on the one side, I'm still sort of old school in the sense of boots on the ground is still, you know, the #1 thing that drives us. But with this cards AI technology, it really is a fantastic opportunity for, you know, essentially what happens is if a project has a good enough database to start with, and that means here we're talking about you've got a good database with lots of geophysical data, lots of geochem, lots of geology. Essentially what happens in this process is they run lots of permutations and look at all the combinations. And essentially what comes out of this is out of all of these algorithms, they'll come back to you and say, if this is your property, we figure that 50% of it is of lower priority. And I'm just sort of taking a stab at numbers here. I mean, these might not be the exact numbers, but essentially what it does, it says these parts of your property are of lower priority. So therefore, you know, you shouldn't spend as much time. These areas are higher priority. And these are the areas where you have the highest probability of making a discovery. And I should also mention too, in our case, we have it tweaked for copper and base metal type mineralization, but I have seen a lot of successful projects done on gold and other commodities as well too. So it's not just something that can be applied to the copper space. It can be applied to, you know, to copper, to nickel, gold, whatever you want to apply it to. So we're very comfortable and very confident that some good things will come out of that.
And perhaps I can just bring in Emily King. Obviously, one of your roles is now Chief Innovation Officer of Analog Gold. I guess kind of a question for you is, I guess, as to how are you innovating at Analog Gold? But then also, I guess, then related to the presentation we've just had from Eric, whether you had any sort of any kind of thoughts or a question for Eric.
Yeah, well, first off, I think the integration of AI and all sorts of new cutting edge technology is so important in this COVID era, because it really helps you de-risk deal flow, but also work on the ground, right? By reducing the amount of ground you have to cover with boots on the ground, because you do still have to put smart geologists out there to look at rocks, right? That's still how this happens, but we can maybe narrow down those targets by using tools like AI. And the way we use AI within Analog and with our platform Prospector is allow investors to leverage AI to search for projects that maybe wouldn't normally come within their personal deal flow or network. And I think similarly, that's where you can start to see companies with projects in Scandinavia and Canada and Argentina, right? Because if you can find projects that you would have missed otherwise, that also gives you some unique opportunities. So that's what we're doing. We're using AI to look at new projects and make sure we're seeing the whole world's worth of data. And we're also using predictive analytics with Minerva Intelligence. Actually, later this month, we'll have a predictive analytic tool out for the whole country of Mexico for all of our subscribers. So whereas maybe for a small to medium-sized company, if you're in Mexico, maybe it would be too expensive to build your own AI tool, you can actually sign on and use ours.
Yeah, and I think, Emily, that's a very key point, just the fact about focusing your efforts. If you can actually say, this is the 20% or whatever that number is of the property that you really should be spending your time on, that just means you can move these projects forward a lot quicker. You're not spending time on other areas which are of lower interest or lower priority. So I think that's the huge benefit with this technology.
Yeah, but AI should never replace human judgment or expert workers, right? It should just help us be more efficient and make sure we don't miss anything.
Of course.
Eric, did I hear it right? You mentioning that you would be drilling all the 5 projects this year. How much cash do you have, and what kind of drilling are you doing at all the projects?
Yeah, so with the projects that we're drilling, so we do plan to be drilling on 4 of them before the end of the year. So the 5th one, the Swedish one, I think needs another summer season, so that will be 2022. I should also mention too that of the 2 Canadian joint venture projects, one of them, the Savant Lake project, is actually funded by the joint venture partner. So Ethos Gold would be the funder of the drilling at the Savant Lake gold project. So that basically leaves 3 that fall into our sort of realm, if you like, that we need to cover the costs for. Now, the Domain joint venture with Yamana is actually a 70-30 joint venture. So Yamana actually covers 70% of the cost there, and we would cover the 30%. That is a participating joint venture. So the only 2 projects that we really need to cover the 100% for are the 2 copper projects. Now, obviously, at this point in time, during the year, we have enough cash to at least kick off drilling and get a few things going, but obviously for much bigger drill programs, we'll probably need to come back to the market at a later point on the back of some drill results and say, look, this is the justification, we need to continue drilling. But effectively, there's 2 projects that we carry 100% of. There is one that is free carried from our perspective, and the 4th is a 70-30 joint venture with Yamana. So it's not like we need to cover 100% of the drilling costs on all of those. And of course, all of them would be diamond drilling. The one thing I should mention is on the Swedish project, we will be doing some auger drilling, which is just bottom of till sampling effectively, which is what's typically done in Sweden and Finland when you're doing the exploration stage. But that auger drilling is relatively, we're not talking about big diamond drill programs. That's just more geochemical prospecting, if you like, with a drill. So effectively, it's 2 projects we need to cover 100%. One is free carried, and the 4th is a 70-30 joint venture, of which we only have to contribute 30%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a couple of questions from the audience. First question is from Philip Hopwood of KWR Capital. And Philip's question for you, Eric, is in a COVID world, how do you manage your operations projects when they are in Europe and you are elsewhere? There's only so much you can do over Zoom.
Completely agree. Look, so in a European perspective, so if I look at the areas that we're active, and I'm actually based in Spain at the moment, so it's not too bad. I do spend part of my time in Chile, but at the moment I am actually in Spain. getting into Sweden is relatively simple. They have less restrictions. It's much less restrictive than other countries. Norway for us is a problem at the moment just because everybody who goes in needs to do the 2 weeks or the 10 days of confinement, right? So the challenge at the moment really is just, it is very difficult, you know, and we understand it's not easy to get around. Sweden's probably easier than Norway in this case, but everything is manageable as long as you take into account those the confinement periods. Where it's probably also affected us too is on the in Manitoba at the Domain joint venture there. You know, the lockdowns in the communities makes it very difficult, particularly at the permitting stage, to go talk to communities, right? Because, you know, if you want to talk to communities and get your drilling permits and all of this, it's very difficult to do it in an online forum like this. You know, at the end of the day, you have to, but there's just no substitute for face-to-face contact, right? So where it does affect us, I think probably more is not necessarily the traveling backwards and forwards. It's things like permitting where you really, you know, it is nice to have that person-to-person contact. I think that's really critical in that part of the equation.
Got a question from Jacob Ambrose Wilson of Resource Global Network. And his question is, what are the reasons for the Argentina divestments?
Yeah, so the background to the Argentina divestment was simply when we, and just to take, I'll take one step back. So all of these projects are in Santa Cruz province, which is a province that's the southernmost part of Argentina. It's a province that's very, very supportive of mining and great geology too. I mean, we, for people who followed me long enough, you would probably remember that we had a discovery as Extori gold mines down there. We had Cerro Moro, which we sold to Yamana Gold back in 2012. So we know how to operate there, and the potential is fantastic. The problem in Argentina is just that, you know, in the interim, they've had a change of government. You know, I mean, Argentina always has its ups and downs, and we know that. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, if you like. But unfortunately, it's kind of in a downward spiral at the moment, and I see it very difficult to come back from this. And of course, the problem is then for investors in Canada or the US, you know, you're sort of thinking, hey, if I'm making 40% on the Dow this year, why would I invest in Argentina, right? So the reality is, you know, people are just saying, well, why would I even take my money to a risky political jurisdiction like Argentina? It's got nothing to do with the technical issues. And so really the reason for moving on was effectively not that we don't believe in the technical upside in the projects or the district, but the reality is that you know, investors are very hesitant to send money down to Argentina just because of the national political issues more than anything else. So for us, it's a difficult jurisdiction to raise money on the back of, as simple as that.
Okay, and I think I've got time just to squeeze in one last question that was sent in. What about environmental sensitivity in Norway?
Yeah, so in the case of the two projects, so both have old mining operations on them. Actually, the sites are very clean. One thing that's actually amazing, because mining is so ingrained in the culture in these areas that you know, everybody in these localities had grandfathers, you know, that worked in the mines and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a very strong mining culture there. You know, in terms of the old mining liabilities, the government actually took responsibility of that. And actually, if you go to the sites now, you almost wouldn't even know there were mines there. In the case of Locken, you've still got the old process plant, which is still there, and you still have shafts. So you can still see a lot of the old infrastructure. But in terms of the mining operations, you actually almost wouldn't even know there was a mine there. So reality is, so two things happen here. A, the government's done a fantastic job in just making sure these sites are clean. And the second thing too is that basically, you know, by law, it's not the new owners that assume responsibility for somebody else's mess. But generally what we found is that people are very responsible. They're very responsive. They want to see the mines back in production. They want to see us there. You know, of course, as we would anywhere on the planet, we just need to make sure we do it well and do it responsibly. Okay, so we have not seen any pushback at all from Norway in terms of you know, permitting projects or pushing them forward. But as I say, the people are very, very supportive. But we do need to act responsibly, just as we would anywhere else on the planet.
Okay, thank you very much. That's been a really great update there. So let's move on to our next update, which is from Brad from Brad Langille. Brad was the co-founder of both Gammon Gold Inc. and Mex Gold Resources Inc. and served as a director and chief executive officer of both companies. He successfully developed both companies' projects from grassroots to commercial production in Mexico, raising in excess of 500 million for the development and construction of both mines. Brad is now the CEO of GoGold. Over to you, Brad.
Oh, great. Thanks, Andrew. And good morning to good afternoon, wherever everybody is in the world. I'm currently down here in Mexico at our site. But yes, GoGold and our team are very much Mexico focused. I've spent my whole career in Mexico. These are the 4 companies I've we've built 3 mines in Mexico. We've majorly refurbished a 4th. We've bought and sold properties over the last 25 years down here. We've been able to raise funds for all these projects in the capital markets. And in fact, I guess I should update my bio. We're probably up to over $800 million of equity we've raised for our projects and a couple $100 million of debt deals with great partners like the Bank of Montreal, Scotiabank, and others. We're very fortunate in that we have a very strong balance sheet, 265 million shares outstanding, 56 million US cash in the bank. We do have an operating mine, our Parral tailings retreatment, which is working really well for us. We've been producing from there now for 6 years, and we have another 8 years of reserves in front of us. Approximately, it's generating at these prices about $2 million US of free cash flow a month. And that's paying for all of our exploration activities right now and paying for all our G&A. So we truly are a self-funding junior with a very strong balance sheet. And we've taken that balance sheet and we were able to acquire the Los Ricos project, which is in Jalisco State, Mexico, and very well located, about an hour and 45 minutes out of Guadalajara, the second largest city in Mexico. It is a district scale project. We have 2 areas, which are Los Ricos South and Los Ricos North, along about a 35-kilometer trend. We entered the district in March of 2019, and so just 22 months ago. And what we've accomplished so far on the first, and I'll stress that the first of many targets in Los Ricos South and North, we've been able to drill off a maiden resource of 63 million ounces of silver equivalent and another 20 million ounces of inferred resource as well. Just yesterday, we released a PEA on the project that demonstrated a 295 million US net present value of that target. And that was at $21 silver and $15.50 gold. And it would have over $400 million net asset value at closer to spot prices. But where do we go from here for GoGold? It's Los Ricos North. We've always seen that as the biggest part of the mineralized system in this district. And when we initially entered the project in March of 2019, we had 29 concessions. We were missing 5 critical concessions in Los Ricos North. We've been able to secure those, and we secured them last March, and we've started a major drilling program in Los Ricos North. We have planned 100,000 meters of drilling, a $20 million US program over the next 12 months in Los Ricos North. And really, we see Los Ricos North as discovery and resource drilling over the next year, and in the latter part of 2021, we will issue our first maiden resource out of Los Ricos North, and that'll focus on these areas, El Favor, Casados, and Trini. Now, we're only about 300 drill holes into Los Ricos North right now. We completed 35,000 meters of drilling in Los Ricos South, but I will say that what we're seeing right now gives us, a good feeling about having a substantial resource by the latter part of 2021, and it may rival or be even larger than the potential to be larger than what we drilled off so far in Los Ricos South. Some of the areas like Alpha Vor are areas where, we've had drill results from surface up to 52 meters of over 300 grams silver equivalent, including 5 meters of 2.5 kilos. We're about 60% silver and about 40% gold by value. So those are resource areas, but more than just resources, what will really happen, we believe, in Los Ricos this year is a lot of discovery around 100 targets that we've been able to identify in the system in Los Ricos North, targets that are anywhere from reconnaissance targets to targets that we've now put the first few drill holes into. Targets like El Arito, which is one that we have the first 6 drill holes into, 2 kilometers from any previous drilling, and we just are getting some preliminary results there now. We do believe we'll have some good silver, and it's different than anywhere else, some actual base metal values in it as well. That's kind of a picture of the core. Everywhere else in the district, we really don't see any base metals. It's silver, gold, but here we're seeing obviously a lot of galena and sphalerite, so lead, zinc, and silver. So that's an area we hope to have some news out about in the next couple of weeks. Another area that we are doing work on right now would be Nayar in the northern part of the Los Ricos district, where our reconnaissance work has shown some very high grade silver sampling, and we've now started a more detailed program there, and we expect to do some drilling there later in the year. And finally, on GoGold and what we're all about also is production. We have our Parral project, where we've been operating for 6 years. It's a very environmentally friendly, in the sense, a very green project. It ticks all the boxes for ESG. It's the reprocessing of some 300-year-old mine tailings, 20 million tons of them in the city of Parral, Chihuahua. They're our partner. We pay them $70,000 a month US. We take these tailings out of the city onto an agglomerated heap leach. I believe we're one of the first people in the world who have tried agglomerated heap leaching on tailings, and it's worked out really quite well in that currently we're producing about 600,000 silver equivalent ounces per quarter at an all-in cost of about $14.50 per ounce. And it's been very stable, steady state operation. So for ESG, we're cleaning up old tailings, we're providing employment in the community, we're helping fund the budget of the municipality, and and we've developed technology that is probably not only just applicable to 20 million tons of tailings here, but the other hundreds of millions of tons of tailings in the country of Mexico. So with that, that's the elevator pitch story on GoGold. So if you have some questions, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, sure. I think I'd first of all like to bring in Jayant. Do you actually have any investments in Mexico, and do you have any thoughts on GoGold, or question for Brad?
Oh yeah, I'm certainly invested in Mexico. Brad, a couple of questions to do with the PEA that you announced. What is the timeline on this project? What is the discount rate you used? What is the capex? And assuming you don't find anything new at the project, what are the next steps to taking this project into production?
Okay, well, we're very aggressive on the project, from literally putting our boots on the ground, starting drilling in March of 2019 to now, 22 months. We've taken it from significant resource to a PEA. On the PEA, the capex is 125 million US plus another 62 million of sustaining capital on top of that. On the costing, for example, on the plant, it is a 5,000 ton a day crushing, grinding, whole rock leaching CCD mill. That we would have done 50 to 60% costing, actually bid costing on the components of that. So that on the costing, we've used also a 5% discount rate to arrive at the 295 million. And that is at a commodity price of 21 and 15.50. I would also say that on the mining costs, this is 2/3 open pit, 1/3 underground. On the mining cost, also we went out for a bid and on the underground cost as well, we went out for a bid as well. So and from here, we see the project, obviously it's PEA level. We're going to do some more drilling, not just around, around geotechnical oriented core. We'll also do some more metallurgy, and there's can be some more growth in resource down in the south as well around the deposit, and some more drilling into the underground to bring that from inferred up to indicated and measured. The open pit, a lot of the open pit is already measured. I don't know if I hit all the points there.
Right, and how long would it take to put, what is the time frame here? What is next over the next few years?
So we see 2021 bringing it through pre-feasibility. And in 2022, the first part of 2022, it would be either a final feasibility or at least a front-end engineering design. And then by mid-2022, we would hope to make a construction decision. And we look at it probably a 16, 18-month build.
Thank you.
Bringing in Emily, do you have any kind of questions for Brad?
Yeah, I guess Brad, since Analog also has we've got a near production gold mine in Sinaloa. So I constantly get questions about the security situation in Mexico and how we plan to address that once we're producing gold. So I thought maybe I'd give you the opportunity to address that for GoGold for folks who might be concerned about that.
Yeah, I would say that, I've been working in Mexico now 25 years, and we've built 3 mines and refurbished a 4th, mostly in Chihuahua, Guadalajara, Jalisco State now, Nayarit State, which is, of course, right beside Sinaloa. I think that there are places in Mexico that have a bit more security risk. None of the areas we've worked, we've ever had an issue with security. But I do know other operators in Mori, Guerrero, and Michoacan, they are getting assistance from the government and they have been able to overcome those security issues. So I think for myself personally, I mean, maybe you have a bit different experience. We find that the government is very responsive to any security issues. And quite honestly, we haven't had any. So.
Yeah, no, I've had the same experience. And I mean, as Andrew knows, and some of you know, my experience is working in countries like Afghanistan and Libya. So to me, Mexico is, we're 30 minutes inland from Mazatlan. So we're in vacation country to me. But I think Mexico, unfortunately, has a real reality versus perception issue when it comes to that topic. I mean, we're not finding any issues, and if anything were to come up that we've heard from our neighbors in the district, like they've been resolved really quickly. So actually, that's why I wanted to raise it, because I think the security risk is much, much lower than people perceive it to be in these parts of Mexico.
Yeah,
can I
definitely.
just ask a question then to both of you? Because I always had the perception, as you said, it might be a misperception. In terms of security risk for Mexico, it really did vary from province to province, and that some provinces in Mexico were very, very dangerous and were a real security risk if you were in the mining industry. And other provinces are relatively safe. Is that kind of correct, or would you say that the whole of Mexico is relatively safe? It's a misperception of the country as a whole.
Well, for myself, I would say that, and after being here for 25 years, I think you're correct. There has been areas that have had more security risk, but I would give the government credit for addressing it and actually really resolving it. For example, Torex Gold, they operate quite normally down there, and they had an issue, and the government was responsive, and they don't have an issue now, as far as I understand. So I think the main point would be the industry is very important to the Mexican government. It's a very important part of their economy, and they are responsive if we go to them and say we have a problem. Emily, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I agree. I think, and it's important at the national level, but also very important at the local level. We've had very positive interactions with the people that live in the communities that we're working in, and mining is perceived in a very positive way there as a job creator and something that brings in economic growth, infrastructure, all those great things. So even the more you can work with the local community, of course, from the very beginning, and if it's done the right way, that community also wants to support and protect those projects. But I would agree with everything Brad said.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I think let's now move on to our final mining update, which is from Michael Hudson. So perhaps we're able to go and get Michael's slides up on the screen, hopefully. And just whilst we're doing that, I'll give a bit of a brief background for Michael. Michael Hudson is an explorationist and an entrepreneur. During the last 30 years, he has developed and financed mineral exploration properties. And since 2004, he has headed Mawson Resources as chairman, CEO, and director. And just as I've said that, his slides have come up on the screen. So over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Andrew, and a very bright and sprightly 4:43 a.m. Down under here in Melbourne. You know you're getting a bit old in the business when you see a few presentations before you and you've been working on those properties. So, Brad, I was wandering around Gran Cabrera and La Trini 20 years ago on donkeys, and Eric, of course, knows that I've been in Sweden for a long time and been wandering around the gold line. So it's very nice to see projects advancing. So that I've really enjoyed listening there. We're going to talk today about Mawson Gold. It's a TSX listed company. Its key focus is, its focus is here on the slide. Finland has been our flagship. I moved from Sweden to Finland about a decade ago and started exploring across there with more fervor. And recently, only last year, we took a large position in the Victorian goldfields, which is in my backyard here. And then I won't mention the other two semi-grayed out projects because they're basically other people spending money on the ground there. In Oregon, we've joint ventured that out to a partner. We've got a new epithermal discovery in the Cascades in JV with the largest landholder in the US. And then we bought a third partner to spend money on that project. And in Queensland, the government's been funding drilling for us there on big wildcat drilling, looking undercover around the Mount Isa area. But what we're going to just focus on briefly in the next 2.5 minutes is Finland and Victoria. And then I'd just like to show you the last slide, which is not yet, but a technology that's been around for a while, but is really changing things for us and just as a matter of interest. So Finland is a grassroots discovery. We were walking through swamps 7 or 8 years ago and found some outcrops there. And since then, we put about 30 million euros and 60 kilometres in the ground. We've got just over 700,000 ounces of gold equivalent. A very small part of that property has been explored, about 5% of the host horizon. It's a strata-bound hosted gold style that has a structural overprint, and that's where we find the gold. We've got 4 rigs and a 20-kilometre program just starting up. Winter's been a bit late to start in Northern Europe this year, so we've just got the rigs literally mobilising now. It's gone through a couple of resources, a maiden resource about 1.5 years ago, and then 4 months ago we doubled that, and it's on a path. So it's a project that was very exciting with lots of gold everywhere, and now it's pivoting towards not only resource expansion, but in the next year or so, initial economic studies, and we're already starting behind the scenes to to permit. Just talking about operating in this part of the world, and you heard that I had a lot of experience here. As Eric said, you've really got to be on top of your game, and it is a mining culture, and it's very few places in the world. I remember back in Sweden in the day, actually, Eric, when I was being sent letters by local people welcoming us onto the ground and hoping we would find something, which doesn't happen in many parts of the world. But that's indicative of the general belief up there. It's not universal. And we've got a cobalt credit to that gold project in Finland, and that really brings the national or strategic importance to that project. And so you have the local support, and then bring the national, strategic, or European importance to that project. So that's on a roll. Look forward to lots of drill results coming through on that project over the next 4 months, and we're pretty excited. We're focusing on some near surface resources along a number of kilometres of strike, and yeah, stay tuned. Down in Victoria, the Kirkland Lake and Fosterville have rewritten the opportunity that nobody's essentially cared to look in Victoria since pre-World War I. Essentially, it's had some exploration, of course, but the last boom period, I think we're producing more gold here now than we did since pre-World War I, and the opportunity is very real. It's 80 million ounces that's come out of Victoria since 1851, which was the start of the gold rush. Victoria rivaled California in the day in terms of the amount of gold that came out of the gold fields here. But there's two very different styles, and that's the real key point I want to make here. Two very different orogenic styles of gold separated by 60 million years. And the earlier one is that what most of the gold came out of, and Bendigo and Ballarat and those large systems are indicative of that earlier style. The old timers loved them. They were able to go in there and follow the quartz veining and crush the gold and take out the nuggets of gold because it was very nuggety, so it treated very well. And then the one that they didn't look at as much was this later epizonal style. 60 million years later, a lot higher level formed in the crust. It was a little harder metallurgically, and they looked at them, and I'll show you the next slide in a moment. That is one of those fields. But literally, other than the oxide miners that came through in the 80s and 90s looking for near surface resources, nobody's looked at depth across these epizonal fields. So Fosterville is one of those, and they started as an oxide pit, and it was a pretty ordinary mine in many ways, 5 gram refractory dirt until it wasn't, and now it's the second highest grade gold mine on earth, where they started to find this free gold. And that's rewritten the opportunity for going to depth for high grades in these epizonal style deposits. And we've got 3 of the 9 historic epizonal fields in Victoria. If you could just go back, unless you're trying to tell me to shut up.
Are we able to go and get Michael's slides up again?
That was certainly a big hint to push me on, was it, Andrew? So
it kind of like wasn't. It seems to be one of those days we have a few like AV sort of like difficulties. It appears to be, it's like gremlins in the system, but you can talk for as long as you long as you want to, Michael.
No, well, nearly done. So Finland and the Victorian goldfields, we're drilling in Victoria. We've had 2 rigs drilling since August. Actually, one of the key projects that I'm not even showing here is called Sunday Creek, and we've been consistently putting out numbers around 10 to 20 metres at 3 to 4 grams from that, a bit like Eric in Norway, looking around these old mining areas and looking at depth and then extending them, so taking the low-hanging fruit. And like I said, nobody's really looked at depth for these high-grade epizonal systems. So if we just look at the next slide, please. And this is one of the Victorian projects. And the image under there is formed by LiDAR. It's a light detecting and ranging system. It's basically laser light that comes out of a sensor, and it's like 500 million laser pulses every square meter, a shot from an airplane that flies about 500 meters. Now, this is old technology, essentially. It's been around for decades, but the amount of data that you can collect now from LiDAR is huge. The sensors have increased, just like, well, I know it's on the iPhone 12. You've got a LiDAR camera now that you can go and image your room or your couch or whatever, but we're doing it at a much different scale. And literally you can drop your wristwatch on the ground and find it with this technique. And this is just Redcastle. It's out of context for you, but it's one of the projects that we have in Victoria. And what we've done is we've run LiDAR over all our projects. This project, the old timers are just incredible. And this is the thing that staggers me. I mean, we knew there was a lot of shafts, and literally if you were blindfolded and walked around, you'd fall down a hole pretty quickly out there. But there's 40,000 workings in a 5 by 6 kilometre area, that either from shafts to little scratchings in alluvials. The alluvials are in the purple, and the hard rock is in blue. So you can start to do some really cool things around catchments and seeing where the alluvials came from. And really we found new, not necessarily on this project, but we found on this project new areas that old timers knew about in the 1800s that were just lost from the records, new gold fields. We've extended one gold field in a project called Rue from 9 kilometres of strike to 15 kilometres of strike, one of these epizonal fields, because a lot of these workings were lost. Now, the beauty here is that you can see through the vegetation. So those 500,000 bits of laser light that come out each square metre, about 15 to 20 of them get to the land surface, and you can start to map that land surface. And really only a few years ago, we made these discoveries in Finland on the back of LiDAR in the middle of swamps, but it was 3 to 4 returns per square metre. So the amount of resolution, the way we can handle the data. So it's just one tool, like everything's a tool, no black boxes in exploration, that is really helping us unravel these old gold fields. And just the final point is here that the old timers did know about these deposits, these epizonal high-grade deposits. You can see on the left there, the Welcome Group, they took out just under 30,000 ounces at over 100 grams in the day. Now that is a lot smaller than what Fosterville is, but it's sort of rivaling those kind of grades without a doubt. So the old timers did know about them. So we're just reinventing what they already knew also. So and until a few months ago, 17 kilometres of veins here had not one drill hole at depth. And when I mean at depth, the deepest drill hole here was 80 metres, and the average drill hole depth was 35 metres or something like that. So we've been pulling it together. Never as simple as it looks, of course, exploration, and we're pulling together all that data, and you'll hear more about this project very soon. So that really is the 3 minutes that's gone a little longer. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, no problem at all. And your first question you've got, I'm going to take a question from the audience first, from Andrew Broadkey. Do you really think that your partner can secure environmental permitting for the Oregon Gold region in the Cascades? Grassy Mountain, which is the east side of the US state, will likely have big issues for permitting, even though they are far from population centers.
Yeah, so we are in partnership with the largest landholder. They don't like to be named, but you can see they're quite a substantial group and are very well connected there across the board. And I think that gives us there's 3 parties to the table here, gives our other partner who's spending money drilling a great opportunity in terms of fast tracking to understand all the nuances. And you know, it's easy to stand back about any jurisdiction. It's easy to say Mexico is a security risk, or it's easy to say Oregon's hard, but each project has such its nuances, and you really just must be on top of your game. Oregon's not the easiest state in the US without a doubt. All I can say is from our perspective, and you know, we're only drilling there, making discoveries. The permitting there was to drill was simple and easy, and one of the easier places that I've worked. But we had to do things appropriately. You know, on that slide there, we've got Nora, who's a late 30s environmental scientist. She came out of 12 or 13 years of the environmental regulator. She runs our business in Finland now. So these are the kind of people that need to operate our companies in the mining industry as we're making ourselves better and learning how to operate in a paradigm that you know, has changed dramatically. So yeah, not going to be easy, but I think with some of the partnerships we've got there and the mentality that we approach things with, that it's all possible.
Okay. Just keen to bring in Emily. Do you have any kind of questions for Michael and for Mawson Resources?
No, I think Michael, my question would be, you know, and I apologize, my internet kicked me off for a minute there when you were starting your presentation, but with such a geographic spread, what is your decision-making process for acquiring new properties? Because you seem to be geographically certainly diversified.
Yeah, it looks like that when you put a global map up. So we basically not spending a cent in Oregon, and we haven't for the last few years there. Mount Isa will look to joint venture. We had some 100% funding from the government there. Finland is on a path, and we have to think carefully over the next coming years how best to fund that project as it's transitioning towards, in terms of a development. So that the shareholder base will need to change over the coming years. It's not there yet. We've got a number of years of drilling, like the next 2 drill seasons I see, to get that up to a substantial resource size. But it's more a matter of build it and make it bigger at that point rather than spend many more years trying to make it bigger. And then in Australia, it's in our backyard. But so it's easy to operate. I suppose answering that question in terms of COVID too, which was a question earlier that Eric had, having long-term teams is really important. And I'd hate to be starting a company in an area where I didn't have very good relationships and people on the ground. So in Finland, it was only 2 expats who were ever going in and out of there over the last few years, and it was majority Finnish people by a long shot, 95% Finnish people. And then in Australia, we can do our own thing. In terms of budget, 75% is Finland and 25% is Victoria, because that's the nature of drilling costs and how much more drilling needs to go into Finland. We're not looking for new projects at the moment. We're consolidating, collecting the data, opening up those new search spaces, and trying to make new discoveries in Australia and make Finland bigger, and then build that project.
Michael, I have a question for you. You said you are drilling 22,000 meters in Finland. How much are you drilling? What is your game plan in Australia? You seem to have a massive project with a lot of places you should. You probably need to fine tune where you want to work on in Australia. So what are you doing there?
That's right, Jayant. So we've collected a lot of information. What a market like this does, we raised $18 million back in June last year for both these projects, Australia and Finland, and we've got something like $12 million left that we are exploring with. So with that money that we've spent to date, we've collected a lot of that base data. We made a discovery essentially at Sunday Creek, or a rediscovery, if you like. The old timers left a lot behind, and we've extended those systems. So that's stacking up, and that's where we're continuing drilling. So that is the real focus. The other projects, we've collected a lot of geophysical data. We've put in the early diamond drilling to understand these systems. Like I said, nobody had ever drilled under these old gold fields until just a few months ago. We're putting orientated diamond drilling and with that geophysical coverage. So we can start to make some informed decisions with that new data. And at the moment, the easier project to advance is Sunday Creek, because we're continuing to find gold and extend that system. The other projects, we've just finished drilling literally over the last few weeks at Roo and Redcastle, and we'll work out what the next stages are. And it's probably going to cheaper forms of drilling and really trying to nail down the better parts of that system with RC or air core drilling. So early diamond drilling is really important to understand a system, but you go broke if you use that as a prospecting tool.
There's been a couple of questions sort of sent in about your cobalt mineralization, because I understand that your finished resort is gold cobalt. Can you tell us a little bit about the opportunity there in regards to the cobalt mineralization?
Yeah, so the cobalt's about 10% in situ value, and the gold metallurgy in that project in Finland is very good. It's free milling gold. We get 95 to 98% recoveries with gravity and cyanide, and plus 90% in unoptimized studies that we just started doing with the gold and flotation. So there's 2 pathways for the gold that we can look at there to extract it. The cobalt is in minerals that are liberatable, if that's a word. So we can liberate the minerals. They're non-refractory. It's non-refractory cobalt also, but it's a little harder to obtain. So we need to put a float plant in or a magnetic separation, because these cobalt minerals are associated with a magnetic mineral called pyrrhotite. So it's almost a mineral, though, that you'd almost, and I'm not saying this in an absolute sense, but almost break even on in terms of making sure that you're able to produce it. I mean, Finland has just announced over the last few months that they're putting 450 million euros budget into the state mining company to build out their battery supply chain. And they're very much ingrained in it already. They produce something like 10% of the world's refined cobalt. That's half of the non-Chinese refined cobalt, but and with their one single refinery at Capella. But 90% of that feedstock comes from the DRC. And as you probably, a lot of you know, in Europe, it's a huge story, and has been for a while, in building, and the EU has put a huge amount of funds. We've attracted millions of dollars of public funds, of Finnish money, to understand that metallurgy, and EU funding, where members of the EU Battery Alliance and EIT and a lot of those groups that bring lots of smart people to the project. So the cobalt really helps, and it changes the project, to put it much more simply, from a junior with a gold project in Finland to a company that has a strategic project in Finland, and it gains a lot more support because of that.
Thank you very much for that. I think that kind of, I'm just going to sort of round things up now with a sort of a closing question to all of our panelists. We've had a lot of discussion about mining and junior mining exploration today. I'm just curious to go around to each of the panelists in turn as to what they think will be have the biggest drive or the biggest impact on mining exploration in 2021. Whether they think it's going to be technology, innovation, return to normality post-COVID, it's just higher commodity prices. I mean, maybe keeping with yourself first, Michael, what do you think can you see being a big sort of drive or a big game changer in mining exploration in 2021?
Well, there's two things really that work. When you have a market, you can raise money and explore and drill, and drilling is the only thing that ultimately leads to discovery. So higher gold prices in a market absolutely help, because it's hard to keep an exploration company alive on drip feed and not doing a lot of drilling, and then discovery itself feeds back into that cycle. So I mean, looking at Victoria alone, there's been over $200 million raised for Victorian gold around that Fosterville story, with all the companies that are exploring down here. That has a great chance to make a discovery. But if it doesn't, the next hot spot will be discovered, right? And Victoria will be not as hot as it is today. So a discovery in Victoria would absolutely help the industry here as well.
Emily?
I think a big trend for the next year will be essentially the onshoring of mineral production, which will require exploration closer to home for companies that are looking to rearrange and adjust their supply chains based off of the impact of COVID. I think we're starting to see that certainly in North America. And I know I've heard and seen it in other regions, but people looking to do more exploration in areas closer to home, so they have eventually there will be a discovery where they can produce closer to where they're going to be using the product.
Yeah. And do you think, as a follow-up question to that, are we going to see, presumably we saw more remote automation as a result of COVID-19? Is that just a trend that's going to carry on and just going to go and continue to accelerate? I
think it's here to stay, because companies have realized that they can do a lot of work remotely and with new digital tools that they didn't have to learn how to use before. I mean, we've seen so many institutions and companies adapt to this environment by using technology so much faster than they have in the past. And now that they have, I don't think you're going to see that change. I think they will certainly go back to a more normal way of operating with being able to put people on the ground. But I think they're still going to use all of these new innovative technology tools to risk mitigate and generate deal flow.
And returning to Eric from Capella, what do you think will have the biggest impact on mining exploration investment in 2021?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Look, I'd kind of share Michael's views there in the sense of obviously metal prices are the number one. Obviously, we still are in buoyant gold markets. I think also from our perspective, particularly copper it's had a good run in the last 6 months. I think people realize that, and effectively what we're seeing is that if I look at the precious metal space, we haven't been doing a lot of exploration or effective exploration for the last 5, 8 years, whatever you want to call it. So we haven't actually been replacing all the production that we need to. So I think the two things go hand in hand here, where basically we have a situation where metal prices are strong, but we really haven't done a good job of replacing all the production. So I think that will naturally drive people to spend money in exploration.
Well, there was a phrase you used there, effective exploration. Can you explain what you mean by effective exploration?
Yeah, I mean, basically doing the right thing, getting discoveries at the end of the day. I mean, the problem is, you have to do things right. And that's a combination of, as we talked about previously, I mean, it's a combination of good eyes on the ground, good people, and people who know what they're doing, I guess, at the end of the day. We see a lot of people in the business who, haven't had a lot of success over the years. Other teams have. I think one thing that's important is, not just to back the projects, but also to back the right management, people who have a track record of success. And that just automatically increases your odds of discovery. And so I think over the years, if I look at our particular case, I mean, it's been difficult for a number of years, just raising money. So even though we have the track record of success, just because, markets have picked up, and now's the right time to be doing that. But you really need to be backing the good management, people with track record of success, people who know what they're doing, and by default, that's effective exploration. I mean, to know that the end game is the discovery, and then ultimately something that gets mined. I mean, that's the end game. It's not playing the stock exchange or whatever.
And Jayant, what do you think will kind of be the biggest driver on mining exploration?
So, Andrew, a day before yesterday, China came out with its economic figures, and China was the only major country that actually had a positive growth rate in 2020. And China is back to about 7 to 8% growth rate in 2021. They had an export surplus of more than $500 billion last year. And the reason is that they have been manufacturing a higher quantity of laptops and office equipment because a lot of people are working from home. So over the next year, I think the market will gain confidence over the fact that these commodity prices are here to stay, because East Asia is back to normal, at least internally. And gold prices will continue to do well because of what's happening in the US and in the Western countries, the uncertainty that exists here. So a combination of these is that all these commodities and precious metals should continue to be underpinned by, in terms of their prices, and that will then continue to drive investment into mining companies.
How kind of accurate though are figures that come out of China? Because I always, obviously, as you know, Jen, I used to be based in Hong Kong, and when I saw these Chinese GDP growth figures, I always wondered, are they being exaggerated by a couple of percent? How kind of sure can we be that they really are that accurate?
Well, Andrew, no one can be sure about how accurate those figures are. But as with you, I have traveled a lot in China. China is a real country. Your shirt is very likely made in China. A lot of things we see around us are made in China. China is a real country. It's a massive factory. And from what I hear from my friends in China, the unemployment rate is actually very low. It's back to normal. Salaries aren't increasing as high as economic growth is increasing, but salaries are also increasing in China right now. So even if growth rate is exaggerated, it has always been exaggerated. So the fact remains that they are consuming commodities, and that actually does come up in international figures.
Okay, thank you for that. And lastly, if I can just return to Brad, what would be your answers as having the biggest impact on exploration mining investment in 2021?
Well, I think first it's great to be last because you get to hear all these good answers and incorporate them. But no, I think it's going to be commodity price. All of us here on the panel have seen several cycles in this business, and we've gone through a pretty long drought here, there hasn't been a lot of exploration, and it's only been the true, gold funds that have been in the business for funding. And now you're starting to see that change a bit. You're starting to see some more generalist funds getting in. You're starting to see more retail taking interest in the space, and that's going to drive the available money for investment. This is a risky business. This is not an easy business, as everybody on the panel would probably agree. It's not easy finding these deposits. It's not easy building them. And, as Eric stated, you want to deal with management teams who have done it before, have experience, and know how to navigate the landmines that you're bound to come across in the mining business. So, there's going to be an influx of more and more money into the sector. Go with the companies who've done it before. Go with the companies who are, changing with the times. We have to all be, more take ESG seriously, and be socially responsible, environmentally responsible, and and we have to focus on building good, strong companies, John. The stocks, there's building stocks, but basically we have to build the assets, and the stocks will. If we tell people what we're doing, the stocks will perform well.
And then just a follow-up question on that, Brad. I mean, you've obviously been in the business for many, many years. How does this particular sort of like boom stroke growth period compare, say, with 2008 to 2012?
Yeah, I think, I hope we're about 2003 right now. We're just getting going here. That boom was coming out of China as the Chinese economy grew and drove that boom. But in a lot of ways, it feels very similar. Coming out of a very hot .com, 1999, that bubble bursting, and then the growth in China and driving commodity price, and I think a lot of those, there's a lot of similarities. But I think this time around, the majors haven't done a lot of exploration for a long time. There's probably going to be some M&A as some deposits are found, and there's a good opportunity in this boom. And it's going to be important that somebody finds something that's really quite exciting, quite relevant, quite some big deposits. I think will also drive that investment interest, as there's some real big gains made on some of these stocks, and we get a real interest from the broader market.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I think on that positive note, that brings an end to today's 5 at 5. I think that all that remains for me is to go and thank our guests, to go and thank Jayant from Anarcho, to go and thank Emily King from KWR, Prospectus, Analog Gold. Also, many thanks to our sponsors, GoGold, Mawson Resources, and also, God, I've just had far too much coffee today. GoGold, Mawson Resources, and sorry?
And Capella.
And Capella. Sorry, Eric. I've just had too much coffee today. I apologize. So thanks to GoGold, Capella, and Mawson Resources, and also a big thank you to our host, Resource Global Network. My name's Andrew Thake. Thank you very much for joining us this week, and we'll be back next week with 3 5 at 5s. Until then, stay safe. Thank you very much.